When you think of the Avengers, you probably think of a group of superheroes making the world a safer place by fighting against criminals, supervillains, and other evildoers from around the globe, and indeed from around the universe. But sometimes, for one reason or another, they end up fighting against other superhero teams. In this video, using examples from several different forms of media, we'll take a look at a handful of occasions when the Avengers did exactly that. By the way, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and join the notification squad to make sure that you're always up to date with our great new videos. And before we start, can you guess the movie from these emojis? Stay tuned for the answer at the end of our video, and be sure to keep watching for fun trivia questions and fun facts along the way. The X-Men. The two most iconic superhero teams in Marvel's comics have actually clashed several times, but no clashes have been as high profile as the war that occurred between them in the 2012 crossover event, Avengers vs. X-Men. The reason they fought was because of the powerful cosmic entity known as the Phoenix Force, which was headed to Earth and targeting the X-Men's Hope Summers to be its host. Both teams knew of its intentions, but the X-Men believed Hope could control it and wanted it to possess her so she could use its powers to restore the dying mutant race, while the Avengers believed it would bring destruction and that Hope wouldn't be able to control it, putting the entire planet at risk as a result. The two teams waged war but had to join forces in the end to defeat the Phoenix, which had possessed a number of heroes, and they prevailed collectively. Incidentally, do you know which mutant character Fox allowed Marvel Studios to use in exchange for being allowed to change the powers of Negasonic Teenage Warhead in the Deadpool movie? Take a guess. The character Fox allowed Marvel Studios to use in exchange was Ego, the Living Planet, the character played by Kurt Russell in 2017's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The Inhumans. The Avengers have actually fought against the Inhumans on several occasions in the comic books, but for the purposes of variation, we're going to refer to an animated clash between the two teams here. Variety is the spice of life, after all. It happened in the Avengers Assemble animated series, specifically in Season 3, which was subtitled Ultron Revolution. There were actually a number of encounters between the Avengers and Inhumans in Season 3, but we'll focus on one in particular here. Ultron was posing as Truman Marsh, a government liaison who was behind the Inhuman Registration Act, and, as a result, had placed obedience discs on their necks. This allowed Ultron to mind control the Inhumans, which resulted in them fighting on a pier against an Avengers team that included Captain America, Iron Man, the Hulk, and Thor. After discovering that the Inhumans were being controlled, Cap insisted that the Avengers didn't hurt their opponents, but it was still a very violent battle that saw the mind-controlled Black Bolt looking particularly impressive and powerful. He sent the Hulk flying by simply uttering the word "stop," before Thor destroyed the discs and broke the control. The Fantastic Four. After the Avengers themselves and the aforementioned X-Men, Marvel's next most popular superhero team is arguably the Fantastic Four. Yes, that is in spite of the awful live-action movies based on the team. They were Marvel's first superhero team, and given the number of comic books that Marvel has published over the years, it's inevitable that they would have clashed with the Avengers at some point. And in this case, it was one of the most petty fights in comic book history. It happened in 2009, when Hank Pym needed Reed Richards to return a device to him, so he could use it to build a virtual heaven using said device and his own Pym particles. When Pym asked Richards for the device, much to his surprise and shock, the Fantastic Four's elastic-bodied leader refused. His reason for refusing to return the device sparked a brawl between Pym's Avengers and the Fantastic Four. What was that reason? 8 words. I know more about Pym particles than you. Pym was furious and devised a plan to invade the Baxter Building, sending the Avengers into battle. Hercules ended up fighting the Thing, and the Vision ended up fighting the Human Torch, while Pym and Richards had a battle of wits, of sorts. The end result? Richards changed his mind and handed the device over to Pym, meaning the fight was totally pointless. The Defenders. Another iconic Marvel superhero team are, of course, the Defenders. Classically, the team consists of much more powerful members than those you might currently be familiar with on Netflix, and in this case, the roster was Doctor Strange, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Namor, Valkyrie, and Hawkeye, who was briefly assisting them after quitting the Avengers shortly before this incident. It was in 1973's Avengers Defenders War arc, and Enchantress turned the Black Knight to stone. The Defenders and Hawkeye were searching for a way to restore him to his natural state. When Doctor Strange tried to communicate with Black Knight's spirit, his message to Strange was intercepted by a message from Dormammu and Loki, who told the Sorcerer Supreme that only the power of an object called the Evil Eye of Avalon could save his heroic ally. Dormammu's plan was, ultimately, to acquire the Evil Eye for himself, but Loki knew that would make him too powerful, so he convinced the Avengers to stop the Defenders from finding it. A number of battles to obtain the scattered pieces of the object followed, with most of the bouts being won fairly quickly. Fortunately, Thor's battle with Hulk lasted long enough for the two teams to discover that they were being played, so they stopped fighting to combat Loki and Dormammu together. The West Coast Avengers. When Vision suggested that the Avengers' influence should be expanded across the globe, Hawkeye took note and founded the West Coast Avengers in 1984. The team's initial roster was Hawkeye himself, Mockingbird, War Machine, Wonder Man, and Tigra, and they were obviously supposed to be unconditional allies to the main Avengers team. And yet, the two teams have actually found themselves fighting with each other on more than one occasion. After the Grand Master had died in the Contest of Champions, the Elder of the Universe and so-called Master of Games made a bet with Mistress Death to get his life back, manipulating the Avengers and the West Coast Avengers into fighting each other. Resulting battles included Thor defeating Wonder Man, Captain America defeating Mockingbird, the trio of Moon Knight, Hank Pym and Iron Man defeating Black Knight, Wasp and Monica Rambeau, and bizarrely, Hawkeye defeating She-Hulk. Overall, the West Coast Avengers actually won, but the game was revealed to be a ruse by the Grand Master in order to take Mistress Death's power, resulting in Hawkeye having to fight above his pay grade again to trick the Grand Master and save both teams. Freedom Force. Freedom Force are a little-known team who were actually mostly made up of characters commonly known as X-Men villains at the time of this incident, but they were doing work for the government, so they count as good guys for the sake of this list. They consisted of Mystique, Blob, Pyro, Spider-Woman, Destiny, Spiral, and Avalanche when they showed up unannounced at the annual baseball game between the Avengers and the West Coast Avengers. Mystique announced that the Avengers were under arrest, but she refused to say why, which made the heroes wonder whether they should surrender or fight. That is, until Hercules made the decision for them by throwing a pitcher's cart at their unwelcome visitors. During the inevitable subsequent confrontation, while his fellow Avengers were busy fighting, Captain America left to call the government. Cap then returned and surrendered, having confirmed that the warrant for their arrest was genuine, which was just as well because Freedom Force were winning, and only Wonder Man was left in the fight for the Avengers. It was later revealed that the Avengers had been set up by Quicksilver, who had, in turn, been manipulated to do so by Maximus. After his defeat, he was sent back to the Inhumans by the Avengers. Each other. There have been several occasions when the Avengers have been split into two different factions because of their opposing views on something, and this has led to teams composed of Avengers members fighting against each other, most notably in the Civil War storyline. Civil War was a comic book arc in 2006 and 2007, and was adapted into a live-action movie in 2016's Marvel Studios' Captain America Civil War, and each occasion saw teams led by Iron Man and Captain America respectively coming to blows. Both the original storyline and the live-action movie focused on the heroes' conflicting views regarding having to register as superhumans, with the Avengers being split down the middle in terms of their opinions. In each case, they're joined by characters who aren't Avengers, but the fact is that both versions of the story resulted in teams that included Avengers members being at war with each other. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avengers remain split after the events of Captain America Civil War, but they will have to pull their differences aside if they have any chance of defeating Thanos during the upcoming Infinity War plot. The original Avengers. The Avengers took a trip through time using Doctor Doom's time machine, only to return to their own timeline to find that the Scarlet Centurion, who's an alternate universe version of their time-traveling longtime villain, Kang the Conqueror, had altered the past in a monumental way. The Avengers found themselves in a world where the original Avengers, those being Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Giant Man, and Wasp, had done the Scarlet Centurion's bidding for him by killing all of the world's superheroes. The Avengers then set out on a mission to defeat their counterparts, but there was a problem. The current Avengers lineup was a lot less powerful than the original one, and there really wasn't anyone who could stand up to the power of the likes of Thor or Hulk. A plan was devised, however, that saw some of the Avengers taking out past versions of themselves, while Captain America kept Mjolnir away from Thor for a whole minute, causing him to revert back to Donald Blake. Hawkeye stopped Iron Man in his tracks by destroying his armor with an acid arrow, then rushed to help Black Panther defeat the Hulk by using a sonic arrow to turn him back into Bruce Banner. After defeating the original Avengers, the modern crop were able to defeat Kang and restore the timeline to its original, less disturbing state. Squadron Supreme. If you're not familiar with the Squadron Supreme, they're a team of superheroes from an alternate Marvel universe who are actually based on a number of popular DC Comics characters. In one particular story, the President of the United States in their universe, who was under the control of the Serpent Crown, sent them to the 616 Marvel universe to capture the Avengers. The Avengers were beaten, taken away, and locked up in a supposedly secure facility. However, they managed to escape and steal the aforementioned Serpent Crown. Subsequently, the Squadron Supreme split up in order to find them, which resulted in a number of separate battles occurring, the most notable of which was between Vision and 3 of the Squadron Supreme members. Vision bested Lady Lark, Golden Archer, and the Squadron's big hitter, Hyperion, who was created to be the equal of Superman. It shouldn't come as a surprise, however, as Vision was protecting his long-term love interest Scarlet Witch, who was in possession of the Serpent Crown at the time. The Avengers eventually prevailed and made the poor analogs of DC's heroes realize that they were wrong to attack them in the first place. The Justice League of America. Speaking of DC, it isn't only fellow Marvel superheroes that the Avengers have ended up fighting against. They fought against their iconic DC counterparts, the Justice League of America. Running in 2003 and 2004, JLA/Avengers was a crossover story that saw comics' two most popular superhero teams coming to blows. The story happened when two powerful cosmic beings, the Grandmaster from the Marvel and Krona from the DC, decided to play a game for the fate of the Marvel Universe. Swapping champions at the demand of Krona, the Grandmaster chose DC's Justice League of America as his champions, while Krona chose Marvel's Avengers. During the fight, which saw the two teams vying to collect 6 items of power from each universe, there were some truly epic one-on-one battles, such as Superman versus Thor, Green Lantern versus Wonder Man, and Hercules versus Wonder Woman. The Justice League had the upper hand until the final battle, which took place on Marvel Earth, giving the Avengers the edge. But it was at that point that Batman and Captain America saw that they were being played and intervened, preventing Krona from being victorious. Krona altered reality, inevitably forcing the two teams to join forces to restore it back to normal. Although it's less likely to happen than an Avengers versus X-Men movie, can you imagine how fantastic it would be to see this iconic clash of superheroes on screen? Henry Cavill's Superman against Chris Hemsworth's Thor alone is a mouth-watering prospect. Thanks for watching our video about 10 times the Avengers fought other superhero teams. And the answer to the emoji is... Did you get the right answer? Let us know. And make sure you subscribe to our channel and sign up for notifications so you never miss an upload. And make sure you check out our buddies over at CBR.